Now, speaking of the holidays, I do want to talk a little bit about houses of worship. The COVID Command Center, as most people know, publicly reports robust data on COVID spread, giving residents, the media, researchers, and local officials and state officials detailed information on what's up with the virus. We've been refining this data throughout the pandemic to help inform our response to COVID. In October, DPH began including a weekly cluster report and has a team of dedicated epidemiologists who work to track and analyze them. This team has found that most of our cases arise from household spread and informal gatherings where people are letting down their guard, particularly when they're with people they know. But there are other sources of spread as well. We recently discussed youth hockey and several other establishments that have been linked to COVID-19 outbreaks. When we detect possible patterns like this, we deploy that team of epidemiologists to do a deep dive into the data. The team recently completed a close analysis of clusters from places of worship after local boards of health reported several outbreaks occurring in communities around Massachusetts. Now, we know that houses of worship have always served as a place of refuge, especially in difficult times like this. And I remember way back when in March, when we first started talking about our original stay-at-home advisory, how difficult it was for the Lieutenant Governor and me to include places of worship as part of those decisions. And during this time especially, as we head into this holiday season of faith and hope, houses of worship play an enormously strong and important role in many communities and in the lives of individuals and families across the Commonwealth. But as with all gatherings, protocols have been put in place to ensure that services and other functions that happen in houses of worship happen as safely as possible. And the Commonwealth's faith leaders have responded admirably to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many have moved their services online, allowing members to still tune in every week and from the safety of their home. Some have adapted to holding outdoor services or added partitions to listen to services from their vehicle in the parking lot outside. But our data still found that there were too many clusters of cases that stemmed from houses of worship, and these cases spread out into the community at large. Since the start of COVID-19, houses of worship have experienced a total of 36 clusters. Those clusters have led to 316 confirmed cases and 150 total close contacts. 48 Massachusetts cities and towns have had one or more confirmed or probable COVID cases associated with a place of worship cluster event. That by itself is pretty extensive. In the last month alone, places of worship saw 6 clusters with 44 confirmed cases and 22 close contacts. In one of these clusters, contact tracers reported over 200 positive cases. That's obviously a big number, but what's more concerning is that those 200 individuals went off into their own daily routines where they were likely exposed to numerous contacts in different settings. As we've said many times before, one of the most dangerous aspects of COVID-19 is its ability to silently spread from person to person across groups, especially if people are engaged in informal conversation without masks or distance, and in many cases with no symptoms, the so-called silent spread. Contact tracing helps us follow the data to get a picture of how far this virus can reach. In this particular case, about 90 businesses and organizations were exposed as a result of those original cases, and possibly more. Of those 90 organizations, 23 then had clusters of their own arise. That cluster led to over 40 cases at a local university, which came through 2 different chains of contact from 2 attendees at that house of worship. We all know that COVID is contagious, and we all know data like this shows just how quickly a cluster can spread, infect others, and create other clusters. For many reasons, from holidays to funerals to weddings, houses of worship are often the setting for group gatherings, as they should be, have been, and will be. But this holiday season is special for many religious organizations, and they have many additional services and community gatherings, as they always do. Most families have long-standing traditions anchored around their church, their mosque, their synagogue. But we know that this year, it should and will look and feel different due to COVID. And we continue to ask all of our faith leaders and residents who practice to engage in safe policies, protocols, and procedures. Many have moved remotely, as I said before, and that's certainly positive. But I think it's critically important, if you do attend an in-person service, please do wear a mask, keep your distance. Remember that in-person gatherings, especially indoors, have an increased risk for COVID spread. If you're hosting an event, like a wedding, please consider keeping your group small to avoid the risk of transmission and follow the rest of the rules. We know that it's difficult to ask people to modify these time-honored traditions, but COVID has no intention of taking the holiday off, and in many respects, it's many of those time-honored traditions that create some of the most significant issues with respect to spread.